Hi, my name is Sara Levitt, and I'd like to welcome you to our session today, Realia, Engaging All the Senses in the Classroom. I'm thrilled to be a part of the 2021 Virtual High Impact Conference for Educators. I hope you find this session to be helpful and enjoyable. Little information about me. I've been in the classroom for nearly 2 decades, majority of that secondary, middle school, and high school as a teacher. I started in Spanish, but quickly transitioned into TESOL. And I've worked with other educators as well, collaborating and co-teaching different content areas such as algebra, geometry, US history, physical science, biology. And now I am still in the K-12 classroom, but I'm there in a different capacity. I do coaching and professional development for individuals, schools, ESCs, and universities. And I'm still teaching, but I'm teaching at the college level, working with pre-service teachers and teachers who are looking to get their TESOL endorsement or master's. I'm also president of a school board, so I have that lens to look through as well. 3 of my main areas of specialization are SIOP, sheltered instruction, Spanish, and differentiation in the content areas. And then just on a personal note, I am a tornado chasing traveling Tia. If you're not familiar with Tia, it's the Spanish word for aunt. I'm a very hands-on aunt, really big part of my nieces and nephews. They're my whole world. And I love running around chasing tornadoes and traveling when I'm not in the classroom. All right, so let's talk about our objectives for today. We're going to talk about using Realia in the classroom, high energy, high engagement language adventures and scavenger hunts. And I'm also going to talk about some spontaneous lessons, things that you can do with little to no prep, because we could always use a little bit of time, right? So what's Realia? Realia is basically anything we can bring into the classroom to bring it to life. Something you can see, something you can touch, something you can taste, something you can experience. We do that because we know that if students can see it and hear it and touch it and smell it and taste it and play with it or use it, they're going to remember, they're going to understand, they'll capture more information. So just something quick, a quick idea, you might have each student have a little fork, or I'm sorry, a little knife, a little spoon, and then their fingers. It could be a picture of it, it could be their hands, it could be a little plastic, silverware, whatever you want. And, for this, we're going to kind of run through some words. Maybe I'll have pictures of them and just kind of calling them out, and everybody holds up what they would use to eat this particular food. And so again, this is just something to kind of get minds activated, but the act of holding things up and having that consideration and going through the vocabulary is what's really going to help solidify the information. Sometimes we want to introduce ideas or talk about where we're going. And so I can describe it, but maybe I put some authentic pictures up so people have an idea. So let's look at place A. Where could I be going? And this could be something I ask the students, where do you think I'm going? I might ask them why, what else they would see there, what else they would hear there, just to get their minds activated. And maybe we're about to read a story about a family going to a park. When I look at that place B, pretty quickly someone's going to say, okay, going to go grocery shopping. But what else does this information tell you? And so by bringing in those things for students to touch and look at, they're going to discover, oh, wow, well, this person obviously really needs an apple. This is somebody who is trying to be responsible with their money. And so we have coupons. And then if I say, okay, where's the supermarket that I'm going to? Oh, well, I guess it must be in Mexico because I don't think they're going to accept Mexican pesos down the street at Meijer. Sometimes we're just going to put up a big picture page and we're going to talk about it. What do you see? Where do you think these things would be? What color could they be? How would you use them? Just those things to activate that learning, activate that background knowledge before we read a passage or before we dive into a new story. Also, sometimes if we're introducing new vocabulary, we might have some authentic pictures looking at place B, and we could differentiate. Some people might say the ophthalmologist, some people might say the eye doctor. And it's totally fine. We're looking for all those valid answers, but it's again, just to kind of get that activation going. So there's some resources I'm going to share with you. And one of them, they have a lot of different videos with different sounds. Now, what I love about these sounds is they are well recorded, they're authentic, they're things that students might actually encounter. and they'll hear a sound and then have two different pictures that they'll have to choose from. Now, you may have an EL class that has a lot of different learners in there, or a class that has students at a lot of different levels. That's pretty typical. So what could you do with this type of activity? You could have some students listening to the sound and they're circling the correct answer, what they think it is, or marking the picture. They may write the name of what they hear or circle the correct sentence for what's happening, or even write their own sentence about what they hear. So it's just the same activity that everybody's doing, but they're going to be able to, you're going to be able to differentiate and have some students just identify by a picture and other students are writing their own sentences. Now in the content areas, you may pick something that, some sounds that are going to be related to what they're going to learn. You may pick some sounds that are kind of snapshots in the future of an experiment. So just little things to get their minds activated, just so they're engaged. Now, I love grab bag activities. This can be really helpful, whether we are introducing new material, whether we're just kind of working on expanding, adding details, or making up stories. So here are 4 grab bag activities that basically you're going to bring in a grab bag of some sort, and you're going to have some artifacts or pictures or things for students to look at, touch, describe. So for instance, the first one's called Look and Describe. It's exactly what it sounds like. I guess I could come up with fancy names, but I'd rather you just kind of get what we're talking about. So a student would maybe, I like having half the students facing the front of the classroom, the other half facing the back of the classroom. And so what I'll do is I'll go up front and I'll hold up an object, and then kind of partner A is going to be looking at that object and describing that. And so the B students have their back to me so they can't see what it is. And so they're drawing it out, or they're writing a description. They're trying to take in the information they're hearing and act upon it. And then after I've done that, I'm going to go to the other side of the room, pick out that second object, and we're going to do the same thing. And what I really like about this is that instead of just one person talking, or maybe a teacher talking, and all the students are writing or drawing, half the class is getting to talk and half the class is getting to receive, and then we're going to switch, because we need to hear that practice. And then as I'm kind of walking up and down, I'm going to be listening for maybe common errors. I'm going to be listening for some great ideas that students have. I might be looking for some future artists that are going to help me because I cannot draw, whatever is going to work. Now, I also do this with touch and describe, where students don't look, but they just kind of reach in. And so it might be something where we're kind of walking around and different students are reaching in and touching it, and they're getting a different idea, they're drawing it out, they're talking about it. And so they get a chance to experience it. And again, it's piquing their curiosity. So whether it's something where we're really working on specific vocabulary like color or texture, or whether there's some artifacts that I just want them to kind of get their brain engaged and get ready for a story. Artist interpreter is exactly what it sounds like, where either you will have someone drawing and their partner is either describing it and talking about what they're seeing or making up a story, or you could do it vice versa, where someone's telling a story and then their partner is illustrating. The point of this is so that we are taking in information, but by drawing it out, you are kind of synthesizing it, working on it, and using it and applying it, not just kind of sitting there, maybe listening, maybe not. And it's also really helpful for the person who's speaking. They can see the impact of their words. So when I'm talking and I'm doing a description and my partner is drawing, I see, oh, I need to give more detail about this, or I need to explain this better. And it's just something that's really active. We might have a series of words that are going on. It might be a scene that we saw the day before, whatever the case may be. Another thing I'd love to do is to tell me a story. And so that is something where I'll put a couple artifacts in a bag, and then students might pull them out and work together to tell the story of these artifacts. Maybe it's just one thing and they're trying to tell how that artifact got there, where it's made up, what it's made out of, where did it come from. I love doing this particular activity I have a replica of this old key. And so I bring out the key and I kind of walk around with it, and the students are looking at it and I'm saying, okay, and I've actually done this with adults too. What do you think this key opens? what does it look like? And we kind of talk through it, and it looks old, maybe it's to a treasure chest, maybe it's to, a lot of people get very quickly to what it actually is, and it is to a cell in a jail. And they say, okay, well, you know what, this particular place is on an island, and so where do you think that might be? And we kind of talk, and they might Google some answers, or have an idea. They'll say Alcatraz, and I'll say, you know what, it's a really great guess, but it's not actually Alcatraz. And when it is a replica, it's a key, it's a replica of the actual key that opened Nelson Mandela's cell in Robben Island. And so I might use that as an introduction to a unit on Nelson Mandela. I might use it to talk about the stories of artifacts or autobiographies, or introduce social justice. But then that key becomes a symbol that I kind of weave through the rest of that unit. So we might talk about unlocking new clues or unlocking new abilities as we write our essays, or whatever. It's going to kind of help that connect and weave through. And then they get to see that artifact and see the picture of it or hold it, and it becomes more alive. It makes the story more compelling. Sometimes, like I said, they might make the story up. And so if they have something and they have, some clues, it really starts to generate that discussion and those ideas. Just makes it a little bit more exciting, and students are able to perform better. Now, living history is one thing that I love to do, living history museums in my classroom. What's great is you can invite someone into your class. I highly recommend this if you get a chance to do that, whether it's content or language building. So inviting somebody in from the school, a professional, an expert, someone who's experienced something we're learning about. So you might be learning about how to do a certain type of equation. Well, I might bring in somebody who's an engineer who actually uses that math. I might take a video clip of someone talking about using what we're learning in real life. I may bring someone in who's an expert that we can ask questions, and maybe they'll have some artifacts to bring in and share. I also love to do a living history museum where each student is a different person, maybe a different object, and they have to kind of develop awareness and knowledge about their person or their artifact. And everyone else is going to talk to them, engage with them, try to figure out who they are, what was important about them. And they get a chance to walk around and talk to each other and imagine that they are really encountering those people or those artifacts. It's a lot of fun, and students take a lot of responsibility for their own learning because they want to be able to trick their friends, or they want to be able to answer all the questions and share information. And it's a lot of fun. It brings things to life. And then a little bit farther down the line, when they're working on those assessments, they go, oh, yeah, I remember my friend was da 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 da. And again, it's going to help with that retention. It's going to help engage them. They're going to be learning and hearing and talking about it. I also love to recreate scenes, especially in my history class. I even had a science biology teacher. She would kind of do like a moment of discovery, and she'd get all dressed up and do this little scene. But just having things where we create different points in time or different scenes that happen at the same time. I'm really big on the Roaring 20s. That's one of my favorite units to teach in US history. And so I always loved doing a lot with talking about speakeasies and the flappers, and we play the music, and we have real pictures, and we have clothes of that style. And then people can walk around and ask questions about the different scenes. Maybe we set it up in a shadow box, maybe it's a video, but just kind of having those experiences, having that really engaging living experience where their senses are just kind of going crazy, and they're not worried about, okay, what am I reading right now? And only focusing on that. They will have the music and the pictures so that when we go to attack that article, they are more prepared and they have some background knowledge. All right, so that's going to bring me to our second objective, which are high energy, high engagement, language adventures, and scavenger hunts. So, do your students love homework? Probably not. Do they do homework? Maybe not so much. So here are some things that tried and true I have done with students to get them more engaged. Do I have 100% students doing their homework? Of course not. but I have a lot more students who are engaged, are completing the tasks, and I'm able to make them more engaging and more relevant. So I have a few ideas here. The first one is gaming. And so there are, like I said, I'm going to share all these resources with you. And so here is a resource, and there are lots of different games that you can have. Students can build a civilization. We have students who are interacting with NASA. They have things that to practice vocabulary and spelling, or things that are a little bit more engaging, where they have an avatar and they're really immersed. There's a really good one on Nancy Drew, some things that you could do to integrate Minecraft if your students are really into Minecraft. But again, I'm going to share these resources with you, but I at least wanted you to take a peek to see what would be in it. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about are our TikTok videos. Now, there is a video that I am going to share with you, the resource. And this amazing teacher uses TikTok to support some writing in the classroom. And so she has 3 different activities. If you kids don't have access to TikTok, it's okay. You can still do them. But I find that if you have something that's relevant and they can find a video for it, or a TikTok video, or they can record one, it's something, it's not a hard sell to get them to do that. I've had students that will find TikTok videos to help explain a certain concept or vocabulary word, and it's a lot of fun. I always preview them ahead of time, and we might take a few minutes and see that, but it's just kind of a quick snapshot, but it's something that's bite-sized, a good reminder, and it's something that I'll have them revisit. Texting, anytime I can have them text on their homework, it's really successful, particularly in middle school. I might have students, text their vocabulary words to at least 5 people and say, okay, they have to use it properly. Well, then later in the week, I'll have students have to share out examples of someone who texted them and that it was correct. Now, someone will say, well, what happens if they don't actually text it and they just make up the examples? Okay, but do you think they're more likely to just make up examples, or are they more likely to be willing to do it if they're allowed to text? And that's the fun part of it, getting them to use it. I always kind of joke, these parents might hate me because they're like, okay, phone time's over, and like, wait, I have to do my homework. But you know what? That's totally fine. I also will sometimes start a kind of a text chain, and I'll do things through Remind 101, so we don't have to worry about sharing phone numbers or things like that, where each student gets a different study fact. And so then they're supposed to kind of reconnect with their students. And I might have them do this on Google or through an email if texting is not going to work. If we have some sort of interface that we can do in the class. And so what I teach them to do is they only, like if someone reveals their fact, then they can tell their fact back. And they practice back and forth, and I kind of give all these little secret hints. But again, it's just getting them to study. It's just getting them to learn about it and share. Now, creating things, we know that hands-on is the way to go. And here's a little tip. If you haven't ever done any Googling with homeschooling sites, I highly recommend it. So there's one in particular that I'm going to share with you that I love. I love this. It's Weird Unsocialized Homeschoolers. And so it's just kind of fun. The name sort of sticks out. But there's so many different projects on here, art and science and math and great things they can do, whether it's building collages, building models for science class, just so many different different things, dissections, ocean in the jar. So definitely a huge thing to check out. There are things in here for math, maybe different posters we can make, which is again, Realia. It's something that we can have them make, post, have, snapshot on their phone, whatever it is, to make the learning more accessible. Also, a lot of handmade things. I love this, the accordion book that they make, and it doesn't take a whole lot of stuff. You can just get some cardboard, and it's something they can do, different time periods. They could do different stages, and it's a lot of fun. Then you tie it together, it stacks up really nicely, and students could kind of set them up and visit and share with them. All right, so let's take a look. Our next thing are field trips. And there are so many virtual field trips. This one is one I found that I really liked. So there are a lot of places that have different virtual visits you can do. This is obviously looking at the Mars rover. There are so many different engaging field trips. And again, this is one site. There are lots of different options on here. You can look at visiting the US Capitol, DC, looking at some different things for global, the global good. So you could have kind of a social aspect of things to improve the world. There's some here that are really great. This is that Mars one under STEM, but there are just tons of ready to use activities in the classroom where we get them working. And here's one thing that sometimes people don't think about. You know, not everybody in the classroom has to do the same exact thing. And so sometimes I'll give an option of 3 or 4 virtual trips that they can take, and I'll have students do them in groups. And so then when they share out, everybody didn't do the exact same thing, so they're a little bit more apt to really pay attention. We might have look at different aspects of the same place. I once had a group of students who got really geeked out on Pamplona. We were reading a series of articles as part of this reading program, and there was one article about Pamplona. And they got so excited about it that I was like, all right, that's a great thing about teaching language. Whatever you want to learn about, I can do it. So they were so excited about Pamplona that then we started to look at all the different aspects of that experience. We learned about the science of volcanoes erupting, and we looked at that. We looked at, we did web quests where each student in the class had a different artifact, and there were web quests that students could take on artifacts that survived. And it talked about the excavation process, what they learned, what it told us, why it survived. And then each student had something personal that they could add. We talked about, reading different firsthand accounts. And so we talked about, firsthand accounts versus secondhand accounts and, what is credible. And so all those really great conversations all around this whole theme of Pamplona. Now, could I have picked 100 other things? Absolutely. But it was something that kind of tripped the triggers. They were excited about it. We could then look and see, we had footage, not of Pamplona, obviously, but we have footage of other volcanic eruptions. We have, the opportunity to kind of go on Google Street View and see what it looks like now. We could read accounts of the tourists that go there. I remember with one group I did with this, they made up fake reviews of visiting different places in Rome, and it was absolutely hilarious. Like they would make complaints about, silly things like, oh, I was trying to take a picture of the Colosseum and there was this ice cream truck that was right in my way. And just those sorts of things that they really get immersed. But then when we talk about the places or we talk about what happened, they remember it with such incredible detail. Now I have another one that I wanted to share. So escape rooms, and this honestly came from my nephew's recommendation, but there are, again, I'll share you the resource, these amazing escape rooms here, and you kind of click through and it will have kind of a picture and it'll describe something and it kind of sets the scene for you. And then you have to go through and figure out, you watch the videos, and you go through and it'll finally say, okay, there's your first task. So you have to read the right time to be able to go forward. And there are all these different ones. But again, it's something students could work in pairs. They might work alone. And it's just really exciting for them. It's a lot of fun. They're definitely really willing to do things to do things and get excited for class. And again, it's a great story. And then when they go home at night and parents are saying, what did you do today? They are full of their adventures. It's something you could send home. They can share with siblings and, even maybe get the family to do it on the weekends. Just so many different great applications. All right, so sometimes I don't want to have anything that elaborate. I just want to maybe give them a brain break, but get them refreshed. And so I might send them, if we're going to do some talking about adjectives or details, or we're going to write a story together, I might send them on a senses walk. And so they need to come back and tell us about 5 things they saw, 4 things they heard, 3 things that you were able to touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Now, this is something I actually did with adults. I had a class of English learners at a library here in Columbus. I know you guys are elsewhere in the state. And my students would go off for 15-minute walk, and they would come back. And every time I did this, I had a class, sometimes there'd be anywhere from 15 to 40 students, and I ran the gamut from all over the world, all different levels of formal education, all different levels of English proficiency. So a lot of times I would group them up by language proficiency, like their English proficiency abilities, and I had volunteers, and then they would go. And every time I'd have one group that would go rogue, and always that became a great story. But one of my favorites was my group went out, and this was my kind of more lower intermediate group. So I sent them off, and I said, I just want you to go listen. Hear the sounds of the neighborhood. And, 10 minutes pass. I'm like, okay, no big deal. And 15 minutes pass. And other students are starting to come back, and 20 minutes pass, and 25, starting to look out a window. And finally, this group that comes back, and I said, they're lower in their proficiency level. They're not necessarily my biggest talkers, and they come busting in the door, talking all over each other, laughing. We can't even understand what's going on. And I'm like, what on earth happened? Well, they were walking down the streets. They had their clipboards. They were listening. They heard cars, and were looking at a squirrel and blah 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 blah. When they came upon a house with a couple that was arguing, and so they ended up standing in the street or on the sidewalk in front of these people's house and listened to them argue. And so when they came back, it was hilarious. They were all talking all over each other, trying to tell the story. They were, remembering, verbatim little bits and shouting them out. They were laughing about the argument because apparently this lady is, spending too much money at the store, and the guy's spending too much money on alcohol, and he doesn't want to do anything, and she only wants to go out and spend money, and blah, 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 blah. But it was so impactful for them. They had such a great experience. And now maybe we can't send our kids off in the neighborhood, but I do send small groups of kids to go out, and especially if you're in a larger school. This is generally like if it's elementary, you have to be a little bit more careful. You might send, a teacher with them, or maybe you have a good volunteer or something. But I've done this in middle and high, and I'll send them out to listen for things or look for things, and I might give them things to check off. So one of my favorites is, you can see on here where I'll say, okay, I want you to go out and find a couple in love. So you can find a couple that kind of is skipping class and hanging out in the hallway. Maybe somebody having a disagreement or a fight, somebody asking a question, something that they can read that has safety information on it. When they encounter walking through the hall, the communication without words. And so every time I've done something like this, the students have come back having had an experience. And so, it's so funny how many kids, I remember in one group, they were making out behind the vending machine, and none of the kids in my group knew the word for vending machine. Or they heard the administrative assistant in the office, like she hung up the phone, and obviously that person had really annoyed her. And so she made a comment after she hung up. So the kids thought that was a little hilarious. It was kind of a disagreement. Walking down the hall and you hear the teacher ask a question or a student ask a question. So these are things that they're going to be able to find pretty easily. But again, it's just to kind of get us activated. Then when they come back, we have so much to talk about, or they have so much to write about. And it's just a way to kind of really work on their language development, but also have that experiential component. All right, so how else can we kind of capitalize on that time outside of the classroom? Because we absolutely want students to learn all the time. And so we want them to look at their time outside the classroom as another potential learning activity. Again, getting them to do homework can be a challenge, but there's some things that I've been able to assign to students where they take turns. And so they kind of take responsibility, and they have to come back and present to the group. So here's some ideas. Having someone be a movie reviewer. Now, I will sometimes do this in groups where I have students who sign up because they watch the same television show or they're going to watch a certain video, and then they'll come back and kind of present out how was the episode or how was the movie. Tips from a gamer is something that's really helpful if I'm having students work on sequencing events. So they'll come back and say, okay, here's a tip, here's what you do to get past this level, here's what you do to defeat this monster. And they just kind of go up, they're really quick, just a few minutes, but they really work on getting their sequencing down with their language, maybe making a few slides, things like that to really help support their presentation. I will have them give directions. So I've done this where every kid writes directions to somewhere in the school and they put it in an envelope, and then we swap envelopes, and every kid has to follow the directions. And then when they come back, they tell us where they ended up. And so we see how accurate were things. And then when you see where that person ended up, you go, oh, probably could add something here. I should have mentioned that. And so it's a lot of fun. Again, they're up and they're moving, they're exploring, and it's helping them see, okay, when I write, am I being explicit? Am I giving enough clues? Am I giving enough, helpful information? I like to have students practice calling for information. Now, these days, we might just be calling Alexa, but that's okay. I actually had a teacher that was using Alexa for practicing questions, where students would ask questions and then based on the information that Alexa gave them, see how accurate their questions were. But we all know that Alexa can be a little off. So, use it, use with your discretion. But again, it's something fun. And if a kid happens to have an Alexa or have their phone, talk to Siri, all is well. I like to do things that are getting students to talk to other staff members. So maybe I will plant a bonus question with the librarian. Maybe I will plant a clue with a geometry teacher for my algebra class. Those sorts of things to get students to go out and engage and talk to other teachers and say, hey, you and by any chance have a clue from, my math class, would you? Or, I have a question, could you help me out? I also like sending students out to interview neighbors. So it could be something where they meet up with another staff member in school or a friend, or they go out in their community or, a grandparent, and they do an interview. And again, it's just getting them to practice authentic speaking in a safe environment where they feel supported and they can build up their confidence. Another thing in class, and this is always really helpful, we'll have students choose their favorite songs and kind of get them all together and make a little playlist. And then other students will listen to a song for the first time and then tell the story to a friend. And so it's bringing that music in. We're picking things that are, enjoyed by other students, and they're listening. Now, if you're not a big country fan, I'm sorry, but I find that a lot of times country music songs have really funny, great stories. I've done, if you're familiar with Goodbye Earl by the Dixie Chicks, it's, that's a story that we've gone through. I've done when I was working on kind of putting clues together to build up for an inference chapter, we listened to Two Cadillacs. And so those types of things, again, bringing those authentic experiences into the classroom, getting them to use their time on homework and actually do something. Now, if you are a content area teacher, don't feel neglected. I've got a lot of things in here for you too. So some things that you could have them do. If you're a science teacher, have them observe a wild animal. So try to find one and see what they're doing, what they can observe. Having students look for the same rhythm in 3 different songs. So if you've been working on a particular rhythm in your music class, your math class, or your music class, ask students to go find that rhythm. And with all the crazy apps, it's amazing some of the help that they can get. Doing experiments at home. And so there are so many great experiments that students can do at home that have just kind of some basic household items. I like trying to pick things that, everyone's going to have, the toilet paper rolls or a bottle of water, those sorts of things, and have them actually do experiments at home. A lot of times I have them maybe take pictures of the different experiments. So then if we do something similar in class, they have pictures they can add, they might share out about it. It might be something that we're preparing to do, and they do almost like a little mini lab before they come in and do the experiment in class, anything like that. Having them walk around and look for different shapes in their homes. So if we've been practicing shapes in class, and yeah, they're doing that, but if then they can go home and find them and maybe sketch them, take pictures, or even just come in and talk about them, it's just getting them to learn to use the world around them as another teacher. There's a great, if you've not been to the Ellis Island website, I highly recommend it. Students can go through, and Scholastic also has some great tools that you can use where you read or you listen to firsthand accounts of people who came through Ellis Island. If you're an EL teacher, that can be really helpful for your students, even if they were born here, just trying to hear the story of someone else coming from a different place and going through that. But it also helps all students to be brave and try something new, maybe connect to a new place, those sorts of things. I also love having students create a scrapbook. If they're maybe in English class, maybe they do a scrapbook of their life that tells a story. But I also love to do content area scrapbooks. So something in math, maybe we build over the course of the unit where they have some vocabulary that they need to figure out. Then we have some different types of problems that they're going to do, and all of those things that really stick out, that they're going to make a few pages in their scrapbook, and then it becomes like a learning diary. And they might add comments to it, or I might have them put their exit tickets in there, and then they have an artifact that carries with them that really shows what they've learned in that content area. And again, it gets them excited, it gets them engaged. All right, so scavenger hunts. I'm a huge, huge, huge fan. It doesn't mean that you have to do these, electronically. It could be, just coming up spontaneously with friends, or looking for something in a book, in an article. So in math, there may be a lot of different types of numbers you want them to find, just to kind of build on that number sense. And so, finding a whole number and a prime number and a negative number and an even number, all those different things that then they're going to come together and maybe have a page that they write it all in, or just find it and snap a picture of it. I used to have little flip cams that I would send my students out with, and so they could make little videos. And now so many kids have phones, they can do it themselves. I also like looking at content, for instance, in science, all the different organelles in a cell, finding an organelle that is like a bouncer at a club, and an organelle that's kind of like a picnic basket, and one that's like a UPS store and a power plant and the CEO of a company. So those things where they're having to think about their content in a new way. And it's helpful because they can talk about it with friends. They have to learn the associations. They're applying the knowledge of each of those organelles and making that connection to real life. And so we know that if students can define something and talk about its function and make a personal connection of some sort, it really helps to solidify their learning. And it demonstrates to us that they really, truly understand. Because I could memorize the definition of a nucleus, but if I can identify that the CEO of a company or the main office of a school is like the nucleus, then I know they really have a strong understanding of what that organelle does. Social studies, this can be a lot of fun, having a map of some sort, and students have to either look in the legend to find things, or maybe they're reading that map and trying to find a peninsula or a police station or the river or a train. And so they're learning those skills, and then we can talk about directions. There is a wonderful resource on here that I will share with you, and there are tons and tons and tons of different scavenger hunts on here. So what's nice about this site is it has things that are content area. So, like Arizona, birds of prey, science, social studies, it has the standards that it aligns to. They're printable. There's an interactive Egypt scavenger hunt if maybe you do sixth grade ancient history. So they're just all these great opportunities to engage students in something fun and engage them in the content area. All right. Now, English. Okay. So maybe I'm in English class and I need them to, we're going to read a passage today. And so I want to set some expectations of things they need to find. So maybe we're working on figurative language. So I'm going to ask them to find some examples of onomatopoeia. Maybe we're working on clauses or looking at prepositional phrases. So I'm going to have them look for that. Maybe we're just looking for personality traits about a character. But if I set it up like it's a scavenger hunt, all of a sudden it's not, oh, I'm reading, I got to find this. It's, oh, this is a fun game and I'm going to read to play the game. And again, doing the same types of things you would be if you were reading and identifying and text tagging, but setting it up as a scavenger hunt makes it a lot more fun. And students might come up with a lot of different things so that maybe there are 10 personality traits hidden in there or 11. And then you have students are looking for 5. Well, maybe then when they pair up with somebody and say, okay, am I missing some? Can I share some? And I love it when they can text tag in some way. So maybe they color code it in the reading, or they cut it out and paste it and have that the identifiers, whatever works, but just to get it so that they're reading, they're talking about it, they're thinking about it, and they got their hands in it. Because if they're touching, they're manipulating it, we know that's really helpful. Now, one thing that we are finding is that when we look at students who have been typing, that they don't get as much benefit as when they're handwriting. And so we know that having them handwrite some things and manipulate them and sort them out is really helpful for their retention and their understanding. All right, so that's going to bring us to our third objective, spontaneous lessons, little to no prep. I think what I love about these are, like, if you might have a few minutes left in class and you're like, that went a little faster, or I don't have enough time to start this next topic. I need something to kind of get our energy back up to end on a high note. And so sometimes just our closing for the day, having it so that each student shouts out a word from that day's lesson, so they can just use one word. And everybody, I tell them, okay, you can't repeat any of the words, we really have to listen. And so they go in, and as they're calling out their word, sometimes students will connect them to make a sentence, but it actually is a really good check for me, because I see, oh, what really stuck out from today's lesson. So, if you think about, like, with this presentation, and if if we were live and you could shout them things out, maybe someone would say Mars video, or scavenger hunt, or CEO that's like a nucleus, and you could make those connections. And then I, as the teacher, go, oh, wow, that really stuck out to them. But maybe if I'm not hearing something about one of my objectives, I'm like, ooh, that did make an impact. They didn't realize that's what we were supposed to be doing today. And so those types of things that are fun, helpful, help to reactivate that brain, but also give you an insight, a clue. Having students bring in something that is related to the content, having them share, something from home, or pull up something real quick on their phone to share out. So maybe you want to get to know people. And when, beginning of the year, which I know for all of us needs to be far, far away right now. We're just getting settled into summer. But when you've had a little chance to rest and recoup, you're probably going to want to do some prep and think about some things for next year. And the first part of the school year for me is always boot camp. I am training my students to do what I need them to do over the course of the year. So I'm telling you, with 17-year-olds even, we're practicing the processes, coming in the classroom, getting out our materials, working on transitions, all of those fun little things. And so one thing I love to do is kind of get them prepared for all the different types of questions and activities they're going to do. And so when we're getting to know each other, I might have them share out some things like, what are the sights of their life? or the sounds or the smells and the tastes. So you can kind of see here, I was kind of in a middle school minded kind of mood. I see some, people talking, and I see laughter and a horrifying school lunch, and, some of the smells, Axe body spray. If you do middle school or high school, you probably just kind of jerk back a little bit. Sorry about that. But those are the smells of our lives, bacon or Lysol. Lysol has kind of been the theme this whole year. But again, activating those senses, bringing them in. Now, how do I do this in a content? I might say, okay, we're reading a story. Let's stop. What do you think this character sees? What do you think's going on in the background? What do you think they hear? What are the smells? What are the tastes? And if I can draw them in and we can all share those ideas, I can see, one, where are they in their understanding of the depth of the story, but to really get them to dig into the setting and to imagine it, so that when they might not understand all the words or when they might miss a few cues, they have a good memory, a good well-rounded thought of what that character is experiencing and what that might look like, what that might sound like, what it might feel like. All right, so here's another thing I love to do is have, and I, if we were in person, I would be doing this with you. Say, okay, guys, what are some things you always have on you? So here are some things that I find a lot of teachers might always have on them. Their car keys. Now, okay, so everybody holds up their car keys. All right, now find somebody who has a car key that's similar, that has the same make. You can find, okay, who are our minivan drivers? Who might have a cool sports car? Where are my book lovers that always have their Kindle or a book on them? Who are my seasonal allergy people? That's me, always have my tissues on me. Who's the Starbucks fiend? Who always, has their wedding ring? That's helpful. Who's never without a Sharpie? I love doing this to say, okay, what are the things we have and what does that tell us? And so when I'm asking students to look in and to observe, this can be a really quick warm-up activity where they say, okay, what are the clues here? The person who always has a water or always has their lipstick or always has candy, what does that tell me about them? So then later when we're observing something in science class, they know, they kind of heard in that practice, what does that tell us? Or if I'm asking them to kind of look and do a card sort in math class and kind of put connections together, they have those connections there and they're used to observing and putting things together and inferring. All right, so here's a fun game that I'm sure you're familiar with, Two Truths and a Lie. But I like to, kind of bring it into the classroom and look at, could be a personal thing or could be content. So here are three about my personal world. Number one, I was asked to model mascara. Number two, in France, I got trapped in a bathroom that was disinfecting itself. And number three, I caught a case of corporate espionage when I was 17. So you think about, all you probably know right now is I'm a little crazy because of storm chase, talk kind of quickly. Hopefully you think I have some good ideas to share. And so you can kind of figure out what makes sense. Now, this can be in the math classroom. So a triangle can always be split into right triangles. Scaling triangles have two equal angles, and the sum of all internal angles of a triangle is always 180. So two of those things are true, one of them not so much. How about our Federalists who wanted a strong central government, who also supported the Constitution, and Thomas Jefferson was a big Federalist. So one of those things is not quite accurate. And then finally, the human DNA has 23 pairs of chromosomes. The 4 nuclei are adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. And DNA was first discovered in 1869. All right. So I'm going to give you a second to breathe. I'm going to breathe. And we'll see what you know. All right. So my lie is I was asked to model mascara. I was not asked to model mascara, but I was asked to be a lip model at this by a Mary Kay person. They had these competitions. I don't know, not my thing. I thought it was hilarious. I am not a person who would ever be masked to model for anything, but it happened. Now, did I actually get trapped in a self-disinfecting bathroom in France? Absolutely. It's a great story. I should tell you sometime. And I did catch a case of corporate espionage when I was 17 because I don't know, I guess I like putting clues together. All right, so maybe you can see how you did. Our scaling triangles, obviously they do not have two equal angles. It's not nuclei, nucleotides, and we know Thomas Jefferson, he was not a Federalist. All right, so something else that goes in the spontaneity category, but also kind of has that realia because you might use different artifacts. You might walk around and actually have students stand up and act things out. But I love doing story creation. And so I might say, okay, how many people are in a story? 2 or 3? So students be like, 3. Okay, so what is their relationship? Are they siblings? Are they friends? Like, oh, it's, a couple. And so they start telling the story. Now I need to differentiate by level. So I might have my beginners, I'll ask them yes or no questions. So I say, okay, are they friends? Do you think they're friends or they're not friends? And they'll say, oh, I think they're friends. Okay, so our 3 people are friends. And then maybe I have intermediate students. So I might say, so what do you think? Are they new friends or they've been friends for a long time? And I give them options, A, B, or C to choose from. So my beginners might just be getting some yes, no's. My intermediates are going to get some options. And then I'm also going to put a ton of open-ended questions. So where are they going today? Do you think, what's going on? What's the conflict? Are they having an argument? And so we go through and every student is taking turns. Sometimes I do a class vote. I'm like, okay, so are they arguing or are they having a good time? And then we vote. And so as we're going, I'm just jotting a few notes up on the board for the story. The students are picking things, they're generating the ideas of what's happening, what's going on. And then at the end, I'm going to have them write or draw the story. And so again, I can differentiate depending on their abilities. I might have them write a new chapter, write a new ending, write the next step, but it's just a way to kind of come together as a class, create this living thing, and then set it out for them to kind of work on and play with. All right, so that's kind of wrapping up our things for today. So I hope you did find it to be helpful. So quick check-in, do you now know how to use some Realia in your classroom? I'm going to take that as a yes. Did you learn about language, adventures, and scavenger hunts? I hope so, unless you went to the bathroom or to get a drink for a really long time. And are you ready to be spontaneous? Like I said, it's something that, we all need to get re-energized and recharged. And so if I can find a way to pull something in to get somebody excited, to help students fall in love with the content area that I really love, or to get us interacting and talking about something instead of just reading about it in isolation, I think it's going to be a great way to learn. All right, so thank you so much to Slides Carnival and Unsplash because you made this wonderful PowerPoint presentation. And here is my contact information. So if I can be of service to you in any way, feel free to reach out and email. Again, you should have all the links associated with this presentation, but feel free to reach out at any time. I wish you the best. Have a wonderful summer. Take care.